You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. My guest today is Cara Tyrrell, mom of two, an early childhood educator, and the founder of Core 4 Parenting. While teaching preschool and kindergarten, Cara identified a pattern of underdeveloped skill sets in her students, leading to a professional pivot as an online early childhood parent educator. Cara has bachelor degrees in American Sign Language and Linguistics and a master's degree in education. Her courses and coaching programs empower new moms to embrace their parenting personal development journey while teaching them how to maximize their baby's early learning. Yeah. Okay, so we talk about the mentioned underdeveloped skill sets in kids entering kindergarten and what we as parents can do about it. We talk about the pandemic and how it is affecting toddlers and young children. Cara gives me her take on screen time, best practices, and strategies for utilizing technology. We talk about what Cara calls trigger traps, putting yourself first, and how to raise well-rounded kids. Okay, so before we get to Cara, I have to remind you about the amazing service that our friend Tara Clark has going on. Tara, who you all know and love from the super popular Instagram account Modern Mom Probs and from episode 3 of this podcast, launched Modern Mom Style Box. Modern Mom Style Box is a rental service that makes it easy to wear new clothes all month long without any stress or commitment. From seasonal staples to statement pieces, rent unlimited looks for just one flat fee of $60 a month. Yeah, amazing, right? Okay, so here's how it works. First, you browse. There are new items added weekly, and then you add all the styles you like to your virtual closet. Once you do that, you'll be mailed 3 items at a time to wear as often as you'd like. Then when you're ready for something new, send all the items back, or you can even buy your favorites at an exclusive discount and then get ready for your next shipment. You can effortlessly switch up your look all month long with an unlimited rotation of styles delivered right to your door. Yeah, it's amazing. Simply wear, return, and leave the rest to the team at Modern Mom Style Box. For me, it's a no-brainer, cherry on top, that Tara is the founder. She is us. She knows what we want and what we need. And I have 100% confidence in everything Tara does. So check it out today. Link will be in the show notes. Here's Cara. Hey, Cara. So nice to see you. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy. I've looked forward to this particular podcast for a long time.
I know. I've really been trying hard to get this on the calendar. Hasn't happened up till now, mostly because I just needed to get my act together. So I appreciate your patience, and I am looking forward to this as well.
Yeah, I just have a feeling we're going to have a really cool conversation.
Yeah. You and I connected through Hey Mama. And what I honestly, that meeting, I had no idea what I was getting into. That was the first one I'd ever gone to. It was like a networking, Hey Mama, just like meet and greet kind of thing, I think it was. And it just happened to be in the middle of a day where my kids were going bananas. Like I could not reel them in for the life of me just to like sit through that video call. And it so happened that I connected with you and you're like, what's going on over there? Like, I don't know. Help me. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You must come across that a lot in what you do. Just like moms being like, hi, help me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just felt you like through the screen that day. I
Yeah.
just felt you wanting to be your best engaged self on the call and your best engaged self in your world as a mom. And I mean, that was a while ago. So we
Yeah.
were still doing a lot of that pandemic style parenting and working.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had to reach out to you just
I
because my heart was saying, oh my gosh, this mom needs a friend.
thank you. And I do want to ask you about the pandemic and all of this with parenting, but I think for me and for the listeners, we should start at the beginning. So, what is core four parenting? What does that mean?
Absolutely. Always start at the beginning, right?
Yeah, let's get a good basis for who you are and what we're talking about.
So, Core 4 parenting is a conscious, proactive parenting methodology. I'm an early childhood educator and I'm a conscious parenting coach. And I blended the two into a curriculum that lives inside our virtual village, our safe space for moms who are pregnant up to having a 5-year-old, because the goal here is to give moms what they need in order to support their children with the skill sets they need to become kindergarten ready and world ready kiddos.
Mhm. And this came from your experience and feeling like there was a lack of readiness all around. Can you talk a little bit about specifically what that looked like?
Absolutely. So, as an early childhood educator, I found myself in school settings, right? I was teaching preschool and kindergarten, popping into first grades. And over time, what I noticed was these kids who were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old were coming equally excited every year to
Mm,
learn. But every year that passed by, they were less and less ready to take on the entire classroom. And what I mean by that is there's 4 skill sets that our children need to be practicing between birth and 5 that indicate success when they go to school. And one of them is cognition. So my
mm,
students were coming with ABCs, one, two, threes, colors, numbers down. Like they knew their stuff.
mhm,
But the other 3 sections that they were lacking in practice were the social emotional connections, the interpersonal connections, and the ability to control their physical body and be aware of how to use their body. I mean, in school, you have to sit,
mhm,
right? You have to know how to control a sitting body. In school, you have to understand who's talking and understand the social norm when it's your turn to talk. These things are tricky at best. And so that's what precipitated this for me.
mhm,
And I said, I'm not their first teacher. Their moms and their dads and their primary caregivers are their first teachers.
mm,
And so I shifted and I said, I'm going to create a curricula where I don't have to physically go family to family, work in teeny small groups of people where we can touch masses at the same time, empowering families to be happy, healthy, connected, and teaching their kids the skills they needed to be world ready.
mhm, mhm. Do you have okay, so do you have thoughts on why the trend downward in those areas year after year?
Well, part of it is parents do the best they can with what they have. And part of it is the education that the message we were sending to parents
Mm,
that kindergarten readiness equals knowing those cognitive things.
mhm,
You've done your job well.
mhm,
Good for you if your child knows their ABCs, one, two, threes, colors, and numbers. So part of it's on us,
mhm,
right? That we weren't telling the whole story of what this looked like and sounded like. And then part of it is the massive technological evolution,
mm,
how that this population of kids over that decade were raised in spaces where more and more engagement with devices or screens or toys that made noise or talked back to you kind of in an almost okay way, but not a human interaction. We're taking the place of that human face-to-face, voice-to-voice, unpredictable nature of what is called in early childhood serve and return. We present them with something and they have to engage their brain to come back to us with a response.
Yeah, I know, and it's I can feel it in myself, and I'm sure there's someone listening. Like as soon as you mention screens, it sends this like shockwave through my system of
Mhm.
panic of like, are they getting too much? Are they getting too little? Like just you have, I don't know. And okay, so I think just how technology has impacted the kids. To me, this is also such an example of how technology, and more specifically, I think social media, is impacting parents. You have these really strong camps: no screens, all screens, limit it, don't limit it. It's like, and you can take that into any aspect of parenting, and you have these like really really strong camps, and they conflict. And if you're someone who is seeking information about any of it, it's so overwhelming, and it's so scary to know or not know which to choose, and what kind of parent you're going to be. And it's like you have to define yourself in some way. Where do you sit ultimately with screen time, just as like a blanket question?
I've got you, and I've got your listeners. TV is not evil. Screens are not evil. Phones are not evil. They are tools,
Tools, yeah.
not a toy. And that's how I phrase it to moms to phrase to their children.
Mhm.
This is a tool that we use, not a toy. And as a parent, you need to think of it that way too. Like,
Mm,
why am I choosing to put my child in front of it right now? Is it a toy because I'm at my wit's end and it's the only thing that's going to stop the crying and I just need a minute? Or is it a tool because I truly have something that I need to get done? I've got to start dinner. There's a purpose and a method to why you're choosing it. It goes a long way for moms
mhm,
just to make that distinction, to stop and ask themselves the question, am I band-aiding something, or
mm,
am I creating an opportunity for my child to have some, whatever people choose, learning time? Or I've talked to a mom the other day and she said, we do both. When it's screen time, the first 15 minutes are educational games of our choosing. And the second half, the child can choose whatever they would like to watch based on the approved things on YouTube that we've checked off.
mhm,
And I thought that was a really nice balance.
mhm,
And they use it as a tool so that they can get something done.
mhm. Okay, and I promise I will bring this back to core 4, but I the thing that immediately comes to mind for me is that I feel like I have, over the last year, used it more as a toy rather than a tool, and it is partly because on a regular basis, I am feeling burnt out. And I'm saying to myself, I'm going to ask for help, and the help is going to come in the form of someone just putting the television on for them, or I'm going to try to push through and do this activity with them, or bring them outside, or do something that ultimately is going to leave us all more stressed because I'm not able to regulate. So put it on. Like, why I went from overly stressing about the screen time to now being a person that says, in my mind, right, wrong, I don't know yet, you know, why are you making yourself crazy? Just put it on. I don't know. I don't know. And I've also justified it a little bit more because they're going to school a little bit more. So on the days where they're home, I'm like, But I don't know. I don't know. I'm working on it. I'm working on it, but it's just,
What
it's like,
you
yeah, I don't
what
know.
you
It's so
said, I
hard.
hear it all the time, right? We went from Well, you're demonstrating what millions of moms went through, which was I had an idea and a plan and a way to use this tool as part of my parenting strategies.
Hmm.
And then there was a loss of control. COVID just
Yes.
created a complete loss of control so you went from all the way to the right, all the way to the left.
Hmm.
And so many parents had to do that
Hmm.
just to function. What There's nothing wrong with that. The challenge now is that the pandemic went on so very long that our little people's neural connectors have created very strong pathways that connect almost anything with the result of screen time.
Hmm.
So now our challenge is going to be opening those conversations with our kids, explaining to them when everybody was sick and we had to stay at home all the time.
Hmm.
We had to watch more TV because it was just too crazy here.
Hmm.
Now that we can go back out into the world and play with our friends again and go back to school, we have to set some new rules and boundaries around the way that we're going to use our screens.
Hmm.
And I'm a
Hmm.
huge believer and teacher of the collaborative parenting conversation,
Okay.
including your children in that conversation, sharing your ideas of what that new plan might look like, taking their ideas and saying, I'd love to hear what you have to say. They might really surprise you.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I think even my 2-year-old could understand that to some extent.
Absolutely.
He's really responsive in that way, more so than my 4-year-old was at 2. And that is mostly because my 4-year-old at 2 was in a pandemic. But it's true. I mean, and I've shared this on the show before, but my 4-year-old, my daughter, was 2 when the pandemic started, and my son was born 2 weeks before lockdown. So it got to the point where at her 3-year checkup with our pediatrician, my pediatrician was concerned that she was on the autism spectrum because her development had just halted. And I mean, it was pretty mind-boggling actually that in the time that it was okay, we're at the pediatrician and then we're going to go get her evaluated. And I said to the woman at the office, give me something I can do right now while I wait for this appointment that keeps me off of Google. And she said to me, get rid of the screens and just see how she reacts. And we did a week, 1 week without screens. She
Mhm.
was a different kid. It is, and I'm not like you just heard me say, my kids get screens. So this isn't like, oh, don't have screens. It just, having that side by side comparison was, oh my gosh, it was just wild. Like, what are, like, give us some insight. What are teachers seeing? What are you seeing? Like, how else is this affecting kids? Not just screens, but just
Mm,
the pandemic and parenting. Like,
yeah.
what else are you seeing out there right now?
I am so glad that you asked this question. I am working right now on a specific program for moms of COVID babies who are now toddlers because they have missed half of their life living in a pandemic
Yeah.
state. And those missed learning opportunities are significant
Hmm.
because 85% of the foundational brain growth of your child is done by 5. The literal
Hmm.
size of their brain
Yeah.
is done by 5. So, what we do in those first 5 years matters. And so, these kiddos need people to step in and show their parents strategies so that they can recover those lost opportunities and build those skills in the next 2.5 years.
Hmm.
Um, so, what we're seeing are things like kids smiling with their eyes instead of their mouths because they were either masked or talked to by masked people for so long. And it's fascinating. I mean, from a researcher's perspective, it's like the most fascinating stuff, but from a teacher's perspective and a parent's perspective, it's hard to watch.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing kids start talking later,
Mm-hmm.
orating, even starting to try to use speech sounds later because they've only heard a select group of voices, tonality, intonation, and vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing kids who are chronologically 2.5, but developmentally, when it comes to being in a space with another child and playing together, they struggle.
Mm-hmm.
They are still very much in parallel play, but that means playing by yourself instead of in combination with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
They are, they're not able to meet the traditional expectations that we would as moms when we get together now for a play date in person. Yahoo!
Mm-hmm.
We just want to sit back, hold on to our beverage, whatever it might be, and watch kids play at the age that they're supposed to play. And we can't do that. They
Yeah.
need much more support. They don't know how to talk to each other. They don't know how to problem solve. They don't know how to share. These are all skills that are going to have to be learned or relearned.
Mm-hmm. And that is what we're saying ultimately, taking everyone off the ledge is possible.
It's so possible. The great news. Okay, so I told you your baby's brain is done developing size-wise by 5 years old, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you send them to kindergarten, you've done your thing. Here's the great news. Because it's developing at such a rapid pace, it's pliable.
Mm.
So the recovery time is much, much faster. This half-life is going to be much faster. And that is good news.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a walking, talking human being,
Hmm.
right? You're not usually, so what I teach is this concept of the invisible learning years. That's birth to 3. Okay. And so you're putting information in, and it's absorbing, but you're not getting a lot of feedback. It's a lot of put in for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
not get back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until the day they open their mouth and it all falls out and you will say, where did you learn that? Or how did you know that word? And you, oh, right. I say that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have this great opportunity to get in the trenches with our COVID toddlers and use what they do have, their full body mobility, their control of it, their understanding, complete understanding of what we say to them for good, to
Mm-hmm.
help them learn these skills. And they will recover quickly, but not if we just keep doing what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm. It's hard. I think the hardest part was not having the exposure to other kids to even know that something wasn't, I don't know, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because
Mhm.
every kid is going to develop at their own pace regardless of a pandemic, right? But it was like there were no other kids for me to see if she would be playing with them or not, like, and I feel for, the parents that are really like, my son is a COVID baby, but he always had my older one to bounce off of. So I don't know. I'm so glad to know that it's something that can be worked on. And it makes me think even now as an adult, learning about neuroplasticity and changing our wiring, if it can be done as an adult, it honestly never even occurred to me that of course it can happen as a kid. Right? I mean, that's
I talk
everything.
I talk
Yeah.
about this all the time, how this idea of identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
This self-identity and this personal development journey. And as moms, we're all about it.
Mm-hmm.
But how long did it take us to get here to that awareness phase of it? It starts
33 years.
exactly
Yeah.
46 over, although I've been on a journey for a cool 15 years.
Yeah.
But um, it's imagine if we armed our kids from birth with the
Mm.
idea that we are there to support all of them, Not just, can you tell me what the duck says?
Mm-hmm.
But I am here to hold your spiritual energy. Are you someone who sits by the side of the pool and watches until the other kids do it 7 times before you jump in? Or are you a risk taker? Are you someone who's more than happy to jump on the first try and just see what happens? Like, I'm here to watch who you are. I'm here to support your emotions that come naturally to you. And what I was thinking when you were talking is, yeah, it's really helpful. As long as there's not major comparison involved, it's
Yeah.
really helpful to see your child and a similarly aged child in the same space. But that unique nature of who they are is where we need to tap into. Because a kid who is a natural risk taker doesn't need us pushing them to make those choices. They need us saying, here's an opportunity for you to step back, think it through, and then make a choice, because that's the skill they need to learn to be well-rounded there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the child who is the sit back and watch needs an opportunity to hear you say, I know it's really scary. If you're ready to take this risk, I will walk to the edge of the pool with you and support you that way. So it's about how we're reacting to who our children are, but we do need them in small groups of other children in order to see what they need from us.
Mm-hmm. And you called that earlier conscious parenting. Is that similar, different, or exactly the same as what floats around on the internet as gentle parenting?
It's not. Um, so conscious parenting for me means this intentionality that we're paying attention to our intentions with how we interact with our children, because those interactions and that relationship that we're creating is how we set the foundation to be able to create teachable moments like the ones I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So, circling back, as you asked me to do, to the core 4, there's actually a dual core. It's called the dual core development method that I've created.
Okay.
And the first core are the core 4 connectors. And that is how we interact with our children. And a happy, healthy relationship between a parent and a child is based on open communication, shared trust, honesty, and respect, just like any relationship that you have as an adult, that you feel listened to, valued, heard, and you can believe what the other person says.
Mm-hmm.
That is a relationship between parent and child that we can foster from birth. And then that allows them to feel safe and contained enough inside of it for us to be giving them opportunities to practice the 4 skills that I talked about earlier that create readiness to go to school:
Mm-hmm.
cognitive, interpersonal skills, social emotional skills, and physical body awareness and control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So first, I would love for you to explain to me the difference between social, emotional, and interpersonal.
Oh, great. Yeah. So social emotional is understanding what you're feeling,
Okay.
right? Being able to identify the emotion that you're feeling. Most
So that's
kids,
like the self, like the kid is identifying about themselves.
right? So
Okay.
we're sensory beings, right? So we feel it, but most kids don't have the emotional vocabulary to be able to label it.
Mm,
We tend to, from a very young age, create happy, sad, and mad for our children as their 3 states of emotional being. But they feel way, way, way more than that. They
mhm,
feel overwhelmed. They feel anxious. They feel frustrated. They feel worried. They feel excited. They feel disappointed. They feel elated. They have so many feelings. Um, so, social emotional skills are where a child can feel something, identify it within themselves, and have the self talk to be able to know how then to communicate it to the person, whether that's a parent, a sibling, or a friend.
mhm.
Interpersonal skills are the ones we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
How do you share space with others? Can you read the room? Can you get those social cues? Do you know how to appropriately approach somebody? Can you have a conversation back and forth and back and forth?
Okay. So, where do we start? Like, where's a good place to start with all of this?
I know it's a lot,
It
isn't
is a
it?
lot.
It is.
It's a lot, and I think that is, for me, a lot of the block is that I consume a lot of this
Mhm.
content, but then, the day comes and I just want them to put their shoes on. And I like and it's like, oh, trying to like the Rolodex of my brain of like, how should I say this? How should I not? It starts to feel overwhelming.
Of course. So I always recommend to start with one solid strategy.
Okay.
Live it, breathe it, own it. Make it the only strategy that you use until it feels comfortable and you don't have to think about it. It just comes easily. It just
Mhm.
pops out of your mouth. Well, we'll use you since, this is
Please do.
fantastic. Tell me one situation that is kind of a repeat offender, and I will give you one solid strategy.
Getting like the morning, getting
Okay.
out of the house in the morning. There's just my kids, luckily and not luckily, sometimes they would sleep till 8:30, 9 o'clock if I let them. And they're 2 and 4. So it's like getting them out of bed, dressed, down the stairs, shoes on, out the door for camp or whatever we're doing. It's like a battle.
Okay. So I'm going to have a lot of difficulty promising what I just said with just one. um, um, but you know what? That's a conversation for another time if you'd like. Um, so with kids who are 2 and 4, they need all of them to be part of the readiness experience. The auditory, let's go, let's move. We need to do this, we're late, this and that, just kind of becomes like the teacher in the background of Charlie Brown, right? All they hear is
That's how I feel. That's how I feel. It's like, is anybody hearing me? Until
so
I lose it and I get loud and I hate that. Yeah,
so
go ahead.
I am going to recommend that you create a visual board
Okay.
of the 5 things that they have to do before we leave the house in the morning.
Mm.
Kids are very tactile and they like to feel that sense of accomplishment. This one's done, what's next? And
Mm.
instead of using an auditory plan, which probably will just not work at this point, use a visual plan. And I get really crazy with these things. I go in and I take pictures of the kids doing the things
Oh, I like that.
so that
Yeah.
they can self-identify with that action. And let's be honest, they're super little egotistical people, right? They love to see themselves on things and in things.
They totally do.
um, and make it so that they can either check it off or move it. The
Mm.
moving is really powerful. Like if you make a Velcro, right? So they literally pull it off and move it to the done side.
Mhm.
They feel like big old, we're not swearing on this show,
Yeah, no, they're champions.
people
Yeah.
in control of
Yeah.
their life.
Yeah.
So keep the list short
Mhm.
of things they are responsible for doing on their own. And you have opened up a different world, not only because things are going to get done,
Mhm.
right? But also, they're going to be so busy doing those things independent of you, you can get your stuff done.
Mhm. 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 What's funny is that as you were talking, I was like, I need to do this for myself.
Mhm.
I'm like, before that's a lot of it. I'm amped in the morning because I'm not setting myself up for success for the day in a lot of ways. And, you know, it is, bringing another question to mind. And I know that this is something you're passionate about, but I'm in such a heavy personal self development phase that in my mind, I've almost compartmentalized it as separate from my children and from parenting. And I actually have guilt over that.
Mm.
I actually feel like in working on my body image, working on my business, working on my relationship and my communication, and sometimes even just keeping my head on straight so that I can get out of bed without a good cry is feels very separate from parenting. I'm not reading parenting books. I'm not, I'm almost avoiding it because it feels like I almost have the feeling of I need to get myself right and then I can address this other. And it feels to me that you like to do both at the same time in some way. Is
Yes.
that correct? Like how do I bridge that gap?
Yeah. This is where the collaborative piece of parenting comes in,
Mm,
right? That we are where we are and who we are in this moment, and it might look fine and it might look messy, but it is the reality of this particular stage of your parenting journey.
Mhm.
And you're only on a parenting journey because you have those little people,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And the power, just like we were talking about creating opportunities for them to learn those core skills, that whole child that you want to raise, their body, their mind, and their spirit, needs to see you do this stuff. They need to hear you say, that was really hard for me.
Mhm.
I was afraid to do that, but I tried it and it wasn't actually as bad as I thought.
Mhm.
They need to be part of that journey with you. Now, keep it developmentally appropriate. Obviously, you're not going to share your relationship struggles,
Mhm. Mhm.
but you can come down to their level and say, I know that you're disappointed that mommy and daddy are leaving you with grandma tonight, but I loved daddy and married daddy for a reason. And
Mhm.
it's really important that he and I spend time together just the way you and I spend time together. You are modeling the life that you're trying to design and choose for yourself so that your children will grow up with a space to choose that for themselves.
Mhm. Mhm. And talk to me a little bit about when we have that moment where we acknowledge their feeling, we explain to them what's going on, and we're met with screams, or we're met with a no, or we're met with a tantrum. Like, what's next?
Yeah. Well, so those are three different things. Let's start with tantrum.
Okay. Okay. That's
Okay.
good to know. Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Let's start with tantrum and work back because
Okay.
tantrum is the extreme space. Once your child has gone to tantrum,
Hmm.
there's nothing you can do in that moment.
Okay.
It is their brains have gone on autopilot for a moment and their bodies are expressing everything they couldn't manage to get out any other way. So if you try to rationalize, if you try to bait them with a carrot situation, and none of that is going to work, they've got to get through the tantrum.
Okay.
All right. So in that case, I just say, as calmly and quietly as possible, even if they're being extremely loud, right? You elevating to their elevation only creates a bigger explosion.
Hmm.
Okay. So I say very calmly and quietly, you are so upset right now. I'm going to let you finish how you're feeling. We'll talk after.
Hmm.
Um,
And even if, like, we're doing that, like, it feels like they're not even hearing me say that. Say it,
mhm.
and then sit down, like, be
And give
done.
them the space to do it. I mean,
Okay.
safety first, right? Safety is
Right.
always the caveat to all of this. If they are choosing to flail their body in a way that's not safe for themselves or others, then that's something else. But the next step down that you said was yelling,
Hmm.
which is kind of a repeated burst.
Mm.
Okay. So there is still space in there for you to acknowledge what they're feeling, and you may be able to prevent the full-fledged tantrum.
Hmm.
So, in between yells, just short sentences, 5 words or less if you can get there. You are so mad. I hear how loud your voice is. Something has really upset you. You're just repeatedly validating. Even if you can't come up with all those different variations, say the same thing over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
You are building trust with them.
Mm-hmm.
My mom sees me and hears me.
Okay.
I'm not behaving the way she wants right now, and she still sees me and she still hears me.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the very first one that you said, which was a straight up no.
Man, that no.
Okay.
No.
So
I know it's like supposed to be good that they do that and the whole thing, but it sends like a shockwave through me.
this is really fascinating. This is fascinating, Christy. So here's the deal.
I'm scared.
This is what I call a trigger trap. All right. The word itself triggered you.
Yep.
And in triggering you, all of you reacted, whether you know it or not.
Yep. No, I
Your
can feel
whole
it.
body reacted, your face did something, the energy around you just changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so very often that can just spiral out in your kid. Right. So yeah, exactly. I mean, try that.
Yeah.
Every time you know your trigger traps. That's what I teach. Know your trigger traps and have a plan. When I hear the word no, my body does not react well. So I will have a plan. I will stop and take my deep breath. I will say namaste. Use it. Like, can you imagine the look on your child's face when they said to you no, and you were like, namaste?
Right. Yeah.
Just treat this like a game is the absolute wrong word, but like you're engaging in this conversation with them. If you're able, and when you're able to get there, I usually, when I hear the word no, I'm their their linguistic mirror. Say, oh, it sounds like that's not something you want to do right now. And then they tend to have some different words back at me. And it usually involves why they don't want to do it. Does that mean we're not going to get to doing it? Of course not. If it is a non-option, we have strategies for that. But simply giving them the space to talk about what it is they're not interested in and why they currently think it's not something they want to do is super powerful. Again, you are anchoring those core 4 connectors.
I feel like, aside from me, I love that the trigger traps. It's catchy and I will remember it. Where I'm struggling with that with my daughter mostly is that I feel like developmentally she has the thoughts for why she doesn't want to do something, but her speech has not caught up.
Okay.
And she gets super frustrated.
Yeah, communication frustration is the worst. Imagine being inside that body and having those thoughts, but not having a way to communicate them. So in that case, I recommend doing a little bit of fishing.
Okay.
A little bit of a guessing game on your end, but because you know her so well and because you know your environment so well, you'll probably land on it within the first couple tries, right? So if she's having this reaction, you could say, I wonder if you're trying to do this. I wonder if you wish you could do this, and throw it out there and see if she's able to engage with you since you have filled in some of the blanks for her. Or even if it's really detailed, like, I know that you really like to let the water out of the bath. And I've told you that's not a choice right now. I bet that's why you're so upset. Whatever the detail is that you can bring in, it's really going to support her. You might even see her like, calm down. She's the 2-year-old?
She's a 4-year-old.
She's the 4-year-old. Okay.
She has an IEP and her speech is something that's always being worked on. And it's kind of interesting actually that I think she expresses herself much more clearly and effectively in school than she does at home, because I get all these rave reviews and I get all this feedback about how much she's improved and how great she's doing and all the things she's saying. And I'm like, I don't see everything that you're saying. Like, I trust you, but
Mhm.
at home, I think she's so used to me just knowing what it is she wants and needs that it's almost frustrating when I don't know.
Right. And because you might be in an overwhelmed or
Oh,
whatever
I
state,
practically live in that state. So, yeah.
yeah, it's harder for you to tap into what she's thinking. And honestly, it's important that she does communicate it. So, first of all, this brings us back to the visual board, which is going to be
Yeah.
key for her. And see if you can use some of those strategies too.
Hmm.
What's your daughter's name?
Lucy.
Lucy. I love that. Lucy, when you are frustrated because I'm not understanding what you're saying, you can run over and get the red stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
Show me that you're trying to communicate something and I'm just not getting it.
Hmm.
If you show me the red stop sign, I will stop what I'm doing and we will figure it out together.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
It puts her in control of a strategy that doesn't involve melting down.
Hmm.
It involves trying to problem solve and communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. This is very good. Okay. As always, my show turns into a coaching session for me. Hope
Well,
everyone listening can relate.
I'm here for it. One-on-one coaching is easily my favorite part of my role at Core 4 Parenting. It's
Mhm.
not something I have a ton of time for anymore. So the spots are pretty hard to find, but when they open, it just fills my soul that I get to
Mhm.
do that.
So talk to someone listening that you know has not bought in, right? Like they weren't raised this way. They don't see any problem with either just winging it as a parent or repeating how they were raised. Like what is at risk? What, convince us otherwise, whatever comes to mind for you.
Wow. Well, without going too far one side or the other, I'll simply say, look at the state of the world today.
Touche. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Look at the age of the human beings that are causing the mass mayhem and destruction
Hmm.
and just tragedy and sadness.
Hmm.
That is a one full lifetime generation, not a decade generation, right? That is
Right.
somebody who was born and now they are 18, they are 19,
Hmm.
and they don't have the emotional regulation strategies we were talking about. They don't have an outlet. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to control their physical body. Everything I've been talking about this entire time manifests itself in the adult body.
Hmm.
And we give these people, simply because of their chronological age, the right to make choices that have huge natural consequences. But if we can start working with our little people from the tender age of 0 to integrate all of that and to know they do have safe spaces to process and feel and express and problem solve,
Hmm.
we are going to be raising what I like to say on repeat, world ready kids who are going to change the world.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. And the other thing that's coming to mind, because that that's so important, right? I mean, that goes without saying that we're responsible for raising kids who are going to be adults, right? Like that's obvious and it's everything and it's so important. I think I also struggle, and I know other moms do because I've had this conversation a bunch. Mm, it's the alwaysness of it, and feeling like when we have a moment where we haven't implemented the strategy or we've just had a day in general, almost feeling like you've counteracted the work you did the day before, or feeling now like you've just failed. And like, talk a little bit about, in in a simple way, I want to say almost like the frequency of practice. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, because that's what it is. It's practice.
Yeah.
Just like our kid practices to learn how to walk about 28,000 times before they
Right.
get it,
Right.
we have to practice putting our trigger trap to the side and coming up with a new plan.
Mm.
Um, yeah, this is the tricky one, right? Because of the frequency of it. And that brings us back to the COVID space and pandemic living where it was 24/7
Yeah.
nonstop. My sense that I'm getting from the moms I'm talking to lately is that there is space now showing back up.
Mhm.
It might not be huge amounts of space because childcare is still really full. It might not be quality space where they can like dive into a project and actually complete it. But there are pockets of space showing back up where if you know that your goal is to re-regulate and tap back into your deep parenting why. Why am I doing this in the first place? And who am I trying to raise? That we can bring ourselves back to center,
Mhm.
even if it means there's 2 hours left until bedtime, is our mantra in our heads,
Yeah.
right? Awareness is the key. And I have a mini training that I do on setting your parenting GPS, which, spoiler alert, actually is your adult child.
Mhm.
And then how to work backwards to write yourself a personalized parenting mission statement that is the thing that you cling to remind yourself why you're not going to blow up or why you're going to let your child take that extra 15 seconds that they need to get their bowl to the sink instead of lose it.
Man, like the dawdle like is rough. Oh my gosh, it's rough. Like, let's
Right.
go.
And I
Like,
have them print that thing and put it up in every room and like it just they stop and they read it and they go, oh, yeah, right. This is why I'm doing this. So I think that's the key.
mhm,
Just like corporate people have to know their
mhm,
big why, just like a business owner doesn't start out just doing something just because they have this long term, large, audacious goal. And ours is to raise really good human beings, and we are their model.
mhm, mhm. And do you come across moms who are struggling with, say, like getting their partner on the same page and things like that? Like, how do we manage that dynamic?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a tricky one because the answer is both as simple as it is complicated, right?
Mhm,
Yes, of course, that's true. But so I have a degree in American Sign Language. And in working with the deaf population and the deaf kids, I learned the most amazing thing. They do this thing called code switching.
mm,
So, a deaf child or a hard of hearing child who has some speech capabilities will immediately know who they should sign to and who they should try to talk to.
hmm.
It's fascinating. And then when I became a parent a lot of years ago, my kids are 17 and 19.
Ooh,
Promised land, baby.
wow.
Um, and I taught them both sign from birth because I wanted them to have the ability to communicate with me before they could talk, because that's one of the cool things about it. But my husband didn't know it and didn't want to learn. So they knew to sign to me and talk to him.
That's wild.
Okay. So all of this to say, I promise there's a point, that your kids know who it is that practices conscious parenting.
Mm,
They know who it is they're developing that relationship with.
mm,
They know who is going to draw the line and hold it there lovingly, and they know who's not.
mhm,
All right.
mhm,
So if your partner is not going to get on board, there is absolutely, here's the downside. There's going to be a lot of trying to play the system.
mhm,
It's unavoidable. if that's the way that your household climate works.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are 100% committed to, I am going to work with you, my child, to set you up for success. And that means you're going to hear me say this over and over, and we're going to work together. If you're 100% in, your child will be too.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is when you walk away for girls' night,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I lived this too. So this is lived frustration. You have to be able to leave whatever happens inside your house when you walk away at the door.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hold your partner accountable or responsible for keeping up your style of parenting if they haven't agreed to it.
Mm-hmm.
You're only going to then add another layer, which is partner to partner discord.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just can imagine the single parents and co-parents taking a deep sigh of relief at this moment, because that, I imagine, you're not even there. You don't even know what goes on when you drop your kid off to your co-parent. I mean, it's a lot of sometimes, you might have a great communication relationship, whatever. We don't need to get the specifics, but I can imagine that is like a little scary, a little
And if you
challenging.
are super consistent,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have designed that relationship where they trust you, they believe you, they know you're saying the truth, and you'll talk about anything.
Mm-hmm.
When they come back from that co-parent, or when you come back and the next morning you hear, Daddy let me watch this show, or we had hot fudge sundaes for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the grace and the space to be able to say, oh, that sounds like fun. That was Daddy's choice. I wouldn't make that choice.
Right. Right.
Like, you just leave it right there.
Yeah.
And I promise you, they
Yeah.
will dig their own hole.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't need it's coming to me is like, it doesn't need to be dramatic. It can just be very black and white in that way. Okay. All right. So what does it look like? Like you've mentioned, one-on-one coaching. You mentioned an upcoming, I think you said, course about pandemic parenting. Like, what are the ways to work with you, and what does it actually look like on a like tangible day-to-day basis for someone who signs up for something with you?
Yeah, awesome. So we have created kind of an opt-in system here that meets your needs based on where you are in your parenting journey. So we have a virtual village, which is our online curated space where it's digital, it's 24/7 access, and you can get what you need there if you're in the throes of those early months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you don't have time to be focusing one-on-one anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
except taking care of your new baby.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a suite of digital courses that follow the developmental path of your baby between birth and one that are short. You purchase them, you do them on your own time. Again, you're super busy that first year.
Mm-hmm.
At any point that you need one-on-one coaching, we open that up quarterly. And when the spots are filled, they're filled. And we do have a 8-week, 6-module program coming out in the fall.
Okay.
And that is for these toddler moms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is live. We come together as a group and we get to be together and hear each other. I do my teaching, and then we do a lot of this and we practice and we do follow up. And that program walks you through the soul and science-based strategies that are going to do everything we've talked about here today. We do a mindset module, a perspective module. I explain what's happening inside your child's brain. I have a degree in linguistics as well. So I talk about the linguistics, like the literal language that we use that creates those pathways. And then I bring out the science of our strategies and I stack them up in a plan and just give them to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what to say, you know when to say it, and you know what order to say it in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Is there anything like I want, I want it to be a world where, mm, you know, moms all have access to this, right? It's like I was reading through some of the courses, and I really just love how, particularly in, the third trimester, even the fourth trimester, there's such a lack of education for moms as far as what to expect for themselves, right? It's all baby, 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 what the baby needs, what the baby's going to do, sleep training, breastfeeding, formula, all that drama. And almost no one wants to tell you about your own mental, emotional, physical healing and transformation that goes on. And it does seem like you address that. What what's the drive for you in including that in your courses?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in 8 weeks to go, here's what you need to know, which is the third trimester course, and what to expect when you're done expecting, which is the fourth trimester course. I talk moms through what you were asking me about earlier,
Mm.
this idea of who am I?
Mhm.
Who was I before I got pregnant? And who am I going to be after I deliver this baby? How am I going to maintain my identity as self? Because I worked hard for it, while adding on this layer of identity that's called mom,
Mhm.
not martyring myself, not giving up who I am for my child, but owning that still so that I can be the best person for my child. And that was really the precipitus for creating those two courses that transition from pre to postpartum.
Mhm. I feel like a lot of us, well, I'll speak for myself. I think that in some ways I was hit so hard by that identity crisis in motherhood that I'm not going to say I don't know where I am in the process of coming through that. I don't even know. I'm still in the weeds of it, as you can tell, because I don't have proper wording around it yet. But I'm not mm, I don't regret or have any ill feeling toward having to go through it in terms of finding myself again. This whole, now push for self-development. I appreciate that. And I know what the whatever end line there I get to, which I don't even think I should say it that way. Like, is there ever an end? No,
No.
right? But when I get a little bit more ground under my feet, I can't imagine already not having had the push to do that, but it does still feel like I would have liked to have known it was coming. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
And
know.
it's one of the things that we talk about, it's so important, is setting reasonable and achievable expectations for yourself
Mm,
in those first few months of life. Because people just think they can just hop back and do everything they used to do. But that's really a transition. And it's really an extension of the pregnancy, if you think about it.
mhm,
When you were just talking, it was what popped into my head is, remember how you said that moms tend to feel like that you tended to feel like you were compartmentalizing.
yeah,
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense based on what you just said,
mhm,
right? That my, that I over here, I'm me, and
mhm,
over here, I'm mom,
mhm,
that you toggle.
mhm.
So, and that's a lot, right? They've
Yeah,
talked about how when we get distracted from something, there's I don't know, something like 23 minutes to get refocused. Right. So if you're toggling between states of being
mhm,
based on whether you're doing something independently or doing something with your kids, that's a lot of energy going back and forth and back and forth. No wonder we're so overwhelmed all the time. Um, so yeah, that body, mind, spirit evolution for mom and how we're going to promote that wellness in our new baby is the foundation for the entire Core 4 methodology.
mhm,
And just so your listeners know, I don't leave you high and dry once you get into the virtual village. It's not like talk amongst yourselves. I go live once a week for Q&A and live coaching sessions as a
mhm,
group.
mhm. Yeah, I think that, and then as you're talking in response to me, I always notice that I resist the mm, I resist the label of mom from society. I obviously love it from my children. I love it in settings like this where I'm learning and growing. But it's so funny. Like my friends, my closest friends, I was one of the first to have a baby, and they always would say, "Oh, it's so nice that, you know, we can all get together and it's like not all of a sudden all this baby talk." Like, you know, I was just not the mom that wanted to come in and word vomit about my kids. I wanted it to be separate and I very much resisted it. And I think that it's a hard, it's a complicated feeling to feel like you're happy to be a mom, you love your kids, and yet you don't want to only now have this identity as mom. And I think that a lot of it is because I find it so challenging. I don't want to sit in that light in that label because that's work in that label a lot of the time. I don't
And
know. It's complicated. It's very
that is
complicated.
why the name of our program is The Joy of Parenting.
Oh, okay.
We put joy back in parenting. Why did you have kids? If
I
not to
know, because
find
it's
joy.
supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. And I
Well,
always say we have fun days, we have fun moments. It's just on a whole, I think I do. I'm very triggered by them in a lot of ways. So it's a lot of personal work on my end. It's not simply, and then you combine it with the actual like physical labor of picking them up, putting them down, changing the diaper, making the meals. Da, 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 da. It's a lot of pressure. All right.
I am too. Just for full transparency for your listeners, this journey that I've been on has been a lifetime.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
this that you're hearing through my voice is not always the way it once was.
mhm,
Right? There was a
mhm.
lot of learning that went into, and I still get triggered. My
Yeah,
17-year-old triggers me all the
I'm sure.
time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I fall into the same trap. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. You're nearly an adult. You should be able to. Oh, wait. Nope. We're backing up. I'm doing my plan when I get triggered.
Mhm, mhm. I hear you. All right. And Cara, there's, a lot of talk on my show about self-care. Just as you, Cara, the mom, the business person, how do you like to take care of yourself and how do you actually make it happen?
Okay. Now your listeners are going to have a laugh at this one, but tiny people are so, so special to me. And that's
Mm,
how I feed my soul. My self care is baby and toddler time.
mm,
I did it today. Actually, I was at the office and I was working hard, and I got a text from the nanny who took over for me a bunch of years ago. And she was like, "We're down at the playground if you need a break." And I went and I took 30 minutes and I played
that's
and I
nice.
felt better.
Yeah.
That is me. Okay.
Mhm.
That is why I do the work I do,
Yeah.
because I feel connected so deeply in my soul that way. Other ways that I feel really so when it comes to my teenagers, right? If I get triggered a bit more, um, my self care is quiet.
Mm,
I like quiet space. So whatever, and I don't even have to leave my house to do it. I just have to announce it, right? Set the parameter. I will be putting in my earbuds. I will be closing the door and having quiet meditative time for 30 minutes. Do not disturb me unless the house is on fire.
mhm,
That for me is something I'm now allowed to do because they're older,
mhm,
and it gives me the time I need to reset.
mhm. I'm trying that already. I think it was yesterday I was trying to make them their lunch and they were at my feet going crazy and I was like, "Go in the playroom. You're not allowed out of the playroom until I am done making your lunch. It's plated and it's at the table." Oh my gosh. All right, I love that. Okay. Is there any I'm sure you have a thousand things, but anything coming to mind on your heart, on your soul that you really want to leave listeners with today based on the conversation we had?
Yeah. Wherever you are in your journey, I full honesty, I don't know the demographic of your listeners, but
Mhm.
wherever you are on your journey, it's never too late
Mm.
to choose a new strategy or to choose a new reality. Your kids are going to take the journey with you. So regardless, if you feel like I hear this all the time, like I've created a really tricky situation and now I'm really afraid that my children are just going to turn into brats and I don't know what to do about it. I mean,
Mhm.
how hard is that to hear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Every relationship, you are in relationship with your children. So every relationship has the possibility of morphing and changing if the people in it want to do the work. And you actually are in a much better space that for a positive outcome than say two adults who are in a relationship that's not working,
Mhm.
because your child is going to take your lead and really hear and feel you if you make that decision and you stay consistent with it.
Mhm. Boom. Okay. All right. I feel better. I actually love the visual board thing, and I think my kids are gonna jump all over that. And the trigger traps, that is like speaking to my soul right now. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for your time. Thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like I'm gonna have to have you on in like another few months when I implement these things and there's new challenges.
Sounds good. Can I add one more thing to your visual board?
Yes, please.
Include them in making it.
Okay. That's hard for me. I won't lie to you
Hmm.
because I'm going to do the thing where I type A, want it like perfect. And
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, thank you for clarifying. I mean, explain to them what you're going to do and say, I want you to help me with this. And then tell them the things that are going to be on it. And then ask them, where do you want to be when I take your picture? And like get them involved
okay.
in the making of the stuff.
Okay. But I can still like make the straight lines and the. Okay.
Of
Okay.
course.
Because then, then it becomes one of those things where we're doing it and it's taking 4 hours instead of 40 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
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 Okay. All right. And I think I just have to I have to let go of that a little bit too. You
But not
know?
right now.
No,
Not
not
right
right now.
now.
Not
I
right
mean, the
now.
deal is that you can only work on so many things at once,
I know. I
right?
know.
And if we remember the goal, this particular goal is we know how to get out the door in the morning. It's
Mhm.
not mommy knows how to understand straight lines and
Yeah.
versus wavy lines. So let's
Yeah.
do that later.
Yeah. And I think, you know what? And if I could just add one more thing to that dynamic is that I think also what makes it challenging for them, and this is where I try to have compassion, but I ultimately just get frustrated, is that they don't get up and go to school every day.
Mm.
They only, especially now in the summer where we're on a different schedule, my daughter is going 3 days, my son is going two. And so when I come in the morning, they don't really know if it's a get up and get dressed, go to camp day, or we can have some time, have our breakfast in our PJs because we're just going to do an activity in the kitchen on the floor with mom. You know what I mean? So I think,
You just identified the core of the struggle. That's
yeah.
it. That's
Okay.
it. And there's a very simple solution. Do they go on the same days? Probably not.
They go 2 of the
Oh,
same days.
okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. I'm going to lob one more thing at you. You ready?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Color code your days.
Okay.
School days are one color. Home days are a different color. The night before, when you put them to bed, tell each one, tomorrow is a blue day for you. Tomorrow is a red day for you.
Okay.
What does blue mean? Have them talk to you and repeat it back. It means I get up and go to school. Great. Tomorrow you're going to use your board when you wake up.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay.
Preset them for
Yep.
success.
Yep. Okay. That's good. I like that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my goodness. All right. I will link all of your courses, all of everything, your social media. You're working it. You are out there. I don't know if it's just the law of attraction or what, but I see you everywhere and your hard work is paying off. Your message is getting out there. So thank you. I encourage everyone to check out all of your stuff. And yeah, I'm going to just link everything
Thank
and
you.
we're going to change the world.
Yeah, we are. We are. I'll see you in 18. No, I'll see before that. All right. Thank you.
Is trigger traps not the best term you've ever heard? I love it. It's the best term I've ever heard. Fight me on it. It so accurately describes what often happens in situations with my kids. My kids, as I often have to remind myself, are kids. They are toddlers. They are 2 and 4 years old, and they are acting age appropriately, even when I don't like it. Most of the time, in fact, I don't like it, but I still have to deal with it, right? I'm going to actually take some time later today to write down some known trigger traps and perhaps even share them out loud with my therapist the next time I talk to her. If you caught my solo show on Wednesday, you know that for me, saying anything I'm processing out loud to another person, usually my therapist, adds a level of realness and depth that I can't get from just thinking and ruminating over it in my head. And even Sarah Dalton comes to mind as I think about how often the kid phases change, that I'll likely have to evaluate these trigger traps maybe every 90 days or so, because they're going to age, develop, and change. It's a lot of work being a parent. I also want to share that I've purchased the materials for my morning routine board for the kids, and at the time of writing this, I've yet to actually create it, but hopefully by the time this airs, I will be able to show it to you on my Instagram stories and give an update on how things are going in that department. I really resonated with Cara's thoughts on readiness. I mentioned in the show and in previous shows that we experienced exactly what Cara was referring to with my oldest, my daughter. My daughter was very impacted by the isolation of quarantine. While she knew all of her numbers, colors, shapes, and letters, she lacked interpersonal skills. At the time that all of this was going on, I had a conversation with an early childhood educator who shared the same sentiment with me that Cara did. Parents today are so focused on making sure their kids know their letters, numbers, colors, and shapes, thinking that this is what will set their kids apart. But it's not. It's about, can your kid ask for what he or she wants and needs to get through the day? Can they communicate? Can they express emotions? Can they share? These are the skills that can start to be learned at home, and let the teachers take on the letters, numbers, colors, and shapes. And I see this now with my son. He definitely did not master his colors, numbers, and shapes as quickly as my daughter did, but his interpersonal and social emotional skills seem to be more advanced for his age than they were for her at her age. It's funny, though, because he may not know all of his shapes, but he certainly knows every type of truck and every type of dinosaur. Anyway, I know this is due in part because of what we learned with parenting my daughter through this phase. So take this lesson from me, from Cara, take her courses, listen to educators on what kindergarten readiness really means. Thank you, Cara, so much for the coaching session and for your time and expertise. Thank you for listening, and remember, we got this. It's never too late, and you are doing a great job. All right, bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.